came from. I'm here with Carl Adams, longtime coach of Yuba City, and a member of the Hall of Fame since, when did we put you in, Carl? Was it 2010? 2010 we put you into the Hall of Fame, one of the few from up here in the Sacramento Valley.
Yeah, I think Rita Pritchard was the first from our league, certainly. I don't know if she was the first from the area, but our league is pretty much Northern California. Anything north of Sacramento is one league.
Pretty close.
Huge area, not a lot of debate.
Well, a lot of good debate in little pockets.
Yeah, that's true.
It's good to have us recognized. I know you spent a long time as a lawyer, prosecutor, district attorney.
I was district attorney of Sutter County from 1982 until last year when I retired. 32 years.
It's a long time. And when did that desire to go into law start? Was that young, or was that something from college?
Actually, just before college. When I was in high school, I was a sophomore, and my high school counselor told me that I was going to join the debate team. I said, okay. He and I got along real well, and it was one of those deals of, you're going to join, you're going to try it. If you quit, I won't care, but you're going to try it. So, okay. Yes, Mr. Janung. No problem. And I did. Joined actually right at the end of the year.
Okay.
And there was a novice debate tournament. That was the last tournament of the year.
Kind of after state, what are we going to do for a month?
Yeah.
We'll give the novices a practice.
And so all of the varsity just disgorged all of their files and research and everything, and took on a bunch of novice teams. And this was my first tournament, first debate. And so I found a partner. My best friend and I each found partners. Two girls who were also best friends.
Okay.
And we split up the girls. Four of us learned the debate and went to a tournament.
Sounds fun.
It was a fun thing to do. We had the varsity files, and the work had been done, and all we had to learn was kind of the structure and then wing it. Turned out to be fun, so I stayed.
Yeah, it's easy to get the hooks into you if you have
Went
that.
back the next year and did my own work.
What high school was that in?
Arroyo High School in El Monte, California.
Okay, so you've been in NorCal most of your life.
Well, I was in El Monte, San Gabriel Valley, outside of Los Angeles.
Okay.
Went to Occidental College in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And then graduated from college and moved to San Francisco in 1970 when I started law school. And I was in San Francisco for 4 years, and then came to Yuba City. Well, no, I was in San Francisco longer than that, because my first job as an attorney was in San Francisco. I worked in a building right off of Market Street, and came to Yuba City in 1977 for a job with the Yuba County District Attorney's Office. So I lived here in Sutter County and drove across the river and worked in Yuba County.
Okay.
And then in 1982 I ran for district attorney in Sutter County, where I lived, of course. And
so Yuba City's in Sutter County and Marysville's in Yuba County.
Right, yeah.
Who planned that? And you just loved it up here and stayed, huh?
Just stayed, yeah. Really do like it. This area, for the last 40 years, this area has been a lot like the area in El Monte where I grew up. Growing up, we had horses. We raised cattle. We raised pigs. We had 2.5 acres and animals, and it was rural. My dad planted corn and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'd go to the market, and the people who owned the stores knew me and knew my parents. Same thing here when we moved up here. My first debater, Karen, our oldest daughter, I'd go into stores and people would know Karen because she'd been in to see them, or they'd seen her in a ballet recital, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was that same kind of feeling of you're known in the community, and it was fun.
And it is a nice place. It's part of California that a lot of people don't realize still exists, with the larger lots, the fruit trees, the small towns.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, most of our debaters are now in suburbs and big cities, but we've still got little teams out here that do a good job. So you said Karen was your first debater. This was back in the early 90s?
Well, You know, I gave you my chronology. It might be an idea.
Let me pull that out.
Let's see if I have a copy. Yeah.
It says Karen, 1994, 95, 96.
Yeah. Let me get that out. '91, then Karen started in '92. So, what happened in Yuba City? I didn't actually start the team. The student started the team and recruited me.
That happens.
There were two girls who went to an enrichment at Sacramento State. And they came back, that was during the summer, they came back the next school year and started a speech club at Yuba City High. And could not get any teacher to sponsor their club, couldn't find a teacher who was willing to coach, so they didn't compete at all. But these two girls gathered a bunch of kids and they met every week and gave speeches as a club, did speech contests when they came along, but just shared what they had learned at this enrichment camp with a bunch of other students.
But no chance to get to other schools.
No competition.
And win.
Yeah, nothing but each other and the desire to do it. The following summer, one of the mothers spoke to my wife, Mary Carroll, and Mary Carroll mentioned my name to solve this problem, and I got pulled in real fast. But when I started, I had 8 kids who had been meeting together for a year on their own without any adult help at all, learning to give speeches and trying to learn from these 2 kids who had been to Sac State for a couple of months and knew about this much.
You can't buy that kind of dedication.
No, it was great. The 2 girls who went to Sac State were our league champions in debate, policy debate, the year that one of them graduated and the other was a junior. Their last year together as a team.
It's nice. Start out as freshmen, just barely knowing anything, and get to state by the end.
Yeah.
Especially from far out here. We're about an hour outside Sacramento.
About that, yeah.
So it's always been a drive for your team to get down to competitions.
Every time. No place is close to here but us. And a few times the league drove to Yuba City, and that was always fun.
Oh yeah, we enjoyed coming up here. You always treated us well. I remember the Rotary Club would make sure we were well fed, and it was a long day though.
Well, yeah, it's a long drive, but yeah, when there were tournaments in Yuba City, one of the advantages that I had as a district attorney coach was we'd get the local city councilmen and the supervisors and the superintendent of schools and the police chief and others to come in and judge, particularly Congress. And we put together some terrific judging panels for
Oh yeah, I don't think the kids knew how good they had it, and really had to be on the ball to convince these policymakers that they knew what they were talking about.
Yeah. And then, like you say, we had the Rotary Club who would come in and give everybody a free lunch, which was always a nice thing.
Oh, that small town atmosphere is nice.
Well, it's good. You can get help. You can get help. When I started the team, we didn't meet at the high school. We met in the squad room of the police department.
Okay.
They had room for about 40 people, and they had one wall that was all whiteboard.
That's nice.
And they weren't using it at night. And from my standpoint as a coach, we were meeting after school. And because a lot of the kids had other activities, we met every Monday night from 6 to 8 as a team. And the nice thing about the police department was when the meeting was over, I drove off. If there were kids left, they were sitting in the lobby of the police department until their parents came and picked them up.
You don't have to worry about them.
That's right.
Well,
The police department was very good about accommodating us.
So you started out with a team of 8, and back then well,
that year we got up to about 15 or 16 when recruiting had been done and that settled out.
Now, Yuba City had one high school at that time, right?
Right. Well, we had one public high school, and then Faith Christian High School had a couple hundred students.
Okay.
Yuba City High had about 2,400.
Okay.
And was way overcrowded.
Yeah, and I know they built River Valley.
Right.
So you got 2 public high schools and Faith Christian, and at some point in time, all of those kids have been competing.
Yeah.
I remember we used to call the Godfather of Yuba City because, like, you went to different places and said, you need a debate team.
Yeah, I did that. River Valley was especially fun. We went to River Valley And I had a number of students returning to Yuba City who had been to state. We had taken about 9 students to the state championship the year before, and 7 of them came back, went to state as juniors, came back as seniors. So we went to River Valley, and 2 of my kids from Yuba City volunteered to be the captains for the River Valley team the first year. So we recruited a bunch of River Valley students, mostly freshmen and sophomores, and these 2 seniors from Yuba City who had been to the state championship became their team captain. They went to all of our meetings, they went to all of the River Valley meetings. Sometimes we met and competed together, but there was a lot of information, a lot of encouragement, and the River Valley kids caught on right away that if they worked hard, they could succeed. And worked well. We sent 4 kids from River Valley to the state championship that year. The next year they had students coming back. They had their own team, their own captain. I continued to coach, but then we picked up a teacher at River Valley who was willing to go along. If I was willing to help with the coaching and stuff, then the teacher was willing to go along to tournaments. So did kind of the same thing at Faith Christian. Faith Christian was a much smaller school, but they had a team for 4 or 5 years.
I remember with Becca.
And then also started a team at Sutter High School, which is 20 miles out of town to the west. Got them on their feet. They went a couple of years. Then they went another year after I pulled out of actively assisting there. Same thing at East Nicholas High School to the south of us.
That's a tiny little school. I have friends who went there.
Yeah. And when they wanted it, we got them a team and got them underway, and they competed for a couple of years, and then they faded out. I don't know where Sutter and East Nicholas are now at all. I don't think they've competed for a couple of years.
It's been a while. But you have those 3 core teams that stuck with it, and you handed them off to new people. And
yeah, as a matter of fact, the person who coached the Yuba City High School team when I stopped was one of the students on that very first team who had been one of the students doing speech by herself in a classroom when they couldn't get an advisor. Kim Webb.
Okay.
Kim Chapman when she was a student.
Okay.
But in the time that I coached, she graduated from high school, graduated from college, got a teaching credential, came back to Yuba City as a teacher, and of course helped with the team as soon as she came back. But after a couple of years, I think I coached 14 years as the head coach, basically by myself. And then Kim came in and helped for a couple of years, and then Kim became the first coach after me.
Okay.
That was fun.
And I think last year she kind of handed off to another student who's graduated and come back,
Right.
Ashley Newman.
Yeah, Ashley was also one of my students toward the end. She was actually more involved with Kim than she was with me, but Kim and I both coached Ashley. And then she came back and she's coaching. My daughter coached the team for a couple of years. The youngest one, Catherine, coached for a couple of years. And
So I understand the Godfather reference. We keep it in the family. I know it's great to see people coming back and wanting to stay involved, and the fact that they come back to Yuba City, their real roots here, and it's a comfortable community that they love.
one of the things that was always fun with the team was we met Monday from 6 to 8 at the police department for 14 years. And students would come back from college or from wherever they were, and they knew when the debate team was meeting, so they'd come to the meetings. And my challenge was that whenever anybody came back to the meeting, I had to know their name and the event that they went to the state or national championship
Oh, that's too hard.
So I'd say, this is Ashley Newman. She went to state in oratory. She went to nationals in oratory. She also went to state in dramatic interp. And Ashley would say, yes, that's right. All of the kids who had gone to state or nationals, we referred to in the team as the debate gods and goddesses. So when they came back, my job was to be able to identify them and remember what they had done.
Appropriate for worship.
Well, and a lot of the kids came back and visited, and they'd hang around for a meeting and just be there again, and then they'd disappear. But I had kids show up that I hadn't seen for a decade, And they'd be back in town, and it's Monday night, I think I'll go by the meeting.
It's nice to have that sense of history and continuity and know the team's there. And
It was encouraging for the team that was there because they kept seeing local students who had been at Yuba City High School who had done this. Students who'd gone to state, who'd gone to nationals. People would come in and say, well, I went to nationals in Philadelphia, I went to nationals in Chicago, I went to nationals in Salt Lake City.
yeah, a lot of motivation.
Yeah, it was great for the team. Great for the team that was there and was trying to qualify.
And I think while you were coaching, you had kids at the state tournament every year almost.
Every year. The first year that I went, I had one student qualify, and we wound up taking 2 students anyway.
Okay. This is in days where if someone dropped, you could still slip in, or?
No, this was a personal thing. 2 girls went to the state qualifier. Both of them were nervous about it. Neither one of them thought they could do it. But they made a pact that if either one of them qualified, they'd both go to the state championship.
Okay.
And so the one girl qualified. Her mother went along as a chaperone, and her debate partner, who was the other girl, went to the state championship.
Okay.
So Susie Bentz competed in original oratory at the state championship in San Jose, and her debate partner, who was Kim Chapman,
Okay.
went to the first tournament as an observer and supporter and ally.
Yeah. And once you've been to a big tournament like that, you want to go back.
Yeah, yeah. And neither one of them were seniors. They both came back the next year and had the experience to share, which priceless.
So famous names I know from up here. I know Kim because she's kept so much going, and
Right.
she's in the district attorney's office
Right,
here in
she's
Sutter
deputy
County
DA
now.
now.
She's followed in your footsteps.
While she was teaching, she went to law school, and eventually she graduated, and I was able to hire her when I was district attorney, and she's a deputy DA.
I remember a family called the Blacks. I know there was Devin and younger brother
Younger brother was David,
David.
but on the team ahead of them was the older sister Cassie, and for at least a couple of tournaments one season, her younger sister Andrea, and then Devin and David. The 2 boys were the youngest in the family.
Okay. And you get another family, the Hasty family.
Yeah,
Well, 3 or 4 kids
Cameron
from
Hasty
there.
is my godson, and
Okay.
Brent Hasty is one of my good friends, and Allison Hasty is one of my wife Mary Carroll's close friends. So their kids coming into debate was really a matter of them deciding that their kids were going to go to Yuba City High School. And so Jared went to nationals with Devin Black in policy debate in Philadelphia the year that I got my diamond as an NFL coach.
That was a nice tournament. That was the first nationals I got to go to with a student of my own instead of tagging along as a judge. It was a fun place to be. A lot of history back there.
We took, that was a fun tournament for me. We took 3 students. We took the 2 of them and a girl named Jennifer Chawla, who went in oratory. But I had 3 other students that just showed up in Philadelphia because they knew I was getting a diamond.
Okay.
So, on their own, school was out, their parents put up the money. These 3 kids traveled to Philadelphia.
And it's experiences like that the kids just love. You get out of the high school, you go places, and you learn so much. It might not be what you thought you'd learn,
Right.
but they learn a lot from just traveling, being exposed to new things, and great opportunities.
It's always good, but I always liked it, especially when the state and national championships were on a college campus somewhere. Going that distance and being on another high school campus never had quite the same feeling. But I love taking the kids onto a college campus somewhere, and just fabulous.
It's that little motivation. This is what college is like.
That's right, yeah. And you know, having said that, some of my best memories are the national tournament in South Carolina, which was on a huge high school campus. It was on the high school and the intermediate school next to it, out in the middle of nowhere. And it was a great big high school facility. But the thing that I remember about that tournament is we drive into town and there were banners lining the streets of the town saying, "Welcome NFL."
I bet most of the locals thought it was for football.
Could be. But we went into a lot of businesses And of course the kids are in tournament dress. They don't look like high school students. But we'd go into businesses and get a discount because we were there for the tournament.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, you see a lot of different parts of the country, high schools that are set up different kinds of food, deal with accents.
That's always fun.
Yeah.
I had a friend in the county who did a lot of traveling on business. And when we'd have nationals, I'd always check with him and see if he'd been in this city and if there was any place that was good to go.
Look for the kind of diners, drive-ins, and dives stuff?
No, more like, well, in South Carolina, he told me where to go to get the best barbecue.
Okay.
And so before the tournament started, we had a tradition. Before the tournament started, the last night before the first competition, I'd take the kids out to eat at the best place I could find.
Okay.
And usually it was, a steak dinner or a nice seafood place or whatever, but the best restaurant I could lay my hands on, the team would go out to dinner. And in South Carolina, I took the team out and we all had this just fabulous southern barbecue. Philadelphia, we didn't find a nice place to begin with as nice, but Philadelphia, I remember everybody having the Philadelphia cheese sandwiches,
Yeah.
the Philly cheesesteak.
Made it down to the original place. And
Found through a couple of recommendations a place downtown that was, one of these corner dives, but had a fabulous sandwich. So we sampled it there.
yeah. And
I
imagine,
remember we had a state tournament in Southern California in the Orange County area, and the night before the tournament, the team went to a dinner at the Laguna Yacht Club.
Ooh.
And that was fun.
I imagine some of these places they visit, they start to think about, maybe I could go to college here, maybe I could work here. Don't
Yeah.
have to stay in California my whole life. Not that there's anything wrong with California.
Nothing wrong with California. Always appreciated the kids who came back.
Yeah, well, I'm a kid who came back. We left when I was 5, and I came back in my 20s because I couldn't take the snow anymore. But it's good to see something else in between.
Yeah.
So between the early 90s and, was it 2010 was your last year of really actively supporting?
2010 was the year that I went into the Hall of Fame. And the
Okay.
year that I went in, I wasn't coaching. My last really active year was the year before.
Okay.
And 2010, the team was at the tournament. I went into the Hall of Fame in Bakersfield, and the team was there with another coach. But I went down and my wife and I were in Bakersfield, and my daughter from Colorado flew out and was there for the Hall of Fame.
Nice. So in 20 years, I know there were some changes, especially in debate.
Yeah.
Imagine when you start out, most of your teams are policy teams?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I had a rule on my team for most of the time that I coached that everybody had to do policy at least 1 year.
Okay.
Policy was the thing that brought everybody together, and they'd do research and they'd help each other. And it kind of set within the team a really cooperative atmosphere of helping other teams and them helping you. And we'd get together in the summer and assign research projects from the policy topic. And then when the season started, everybody would do other things, individual events and so forth. But requiring everybody to do 1 year of policy debate, first of all, I think it's a great learning tool.
It is.
But secondly, it was really good in establishing a team dynamic of helping each other. Even in events where they competed against each other, they still helped. And if I had a couple of kids competing in oratory, they'd go to tournaments and compete against each other, but at home they'd listen to each other's speeches and make suggestions and do that sort of thing. I needed that because I had 2 hours a week with them as a group. Another 3 or 4 hours individually. I'd see people in the DA's office sometimes,
Okay.
meet with them after school. But a lot of the stuff that went on in terms of their improvement was them working together in between the weekly meetings. And it was really important to establish that because I wasn't on campus and we didn't have, I wasn't the football team practicing 6 days a week. We had our one night, 2 hours together.
So they have to support each other when they're not there on Monday.
And it worked.
Good. By the end, I know we'd added parliamentary debate, public forum. Did that pull them away from policy, or were they
No,
still
yeah.
sticking with
Like-
policy?
Well, so long as I was coaching, I made everybody do a year of policy
Okay.
for the reasons of the team. But I think that public forum and parliamentary pulled a lot of students away from policy debate because it wasn't as time consuming. Policy debate really required a lot of research and a lot of preparation, more so than any of the other styles of debate. And we made jokes about debate light, but
Yeah, we still do.
But the truth is that the students who were really busy and didn't have the desire to make a big time commitment enjoyed public forum and enjoyed parley, and okay, they're still debating, they're still learning some of the stuff.
But they get that grounding in research from policy.
Yeah. Before the internet was available, I go back that far. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in a meeting with some students, and we were debating, had to do with the global environment. And somebody came into the meeting and said, there's a conference in Brazil on the global environment. And we sat for 2 hours, and I sort of led the kids through, well, if they're having a conference, there must be papers being prepared, and the people going to the conference must be reading something. How would you get them? Where would you go? Who would have them? And eventually the kids came up with a couple of answers, and between 2 meetings that summer, somebody called Washington, D.C. and spoke to the Brazilian embassy.
Awesome. Brave and awesome.
And got another phone number of someone who was working on this conference. During the next week, between the next 2 meetings, one of the other kids made that phone call, got a hold of the person who was working on the conference, explained what they were doing, and the following week we had the conference papers from the international conference in Brazil. I let the students do it all, and the stuff showed up. But it's important for them to learn that there's a way to research that isn't going to the library and looking in the encyclopedia.
No, there's a lot of first-hand information out there, and really the way they use Google, it might as well be the encyclopedia because they're looking at those top 2 hits, and they're not really searching for who are the experts. What can I find? During
the summer, we used to try and prepare the topic, and depending on what the topic was, I remember we had one topic that had to do with mental health or homelessness or something like that. And during the summer, the students on the debate team interviewed the welfare director and the director of a local homeless shelter, and a number of people trying to figure out what were the problems, what was the real issues in this area. And they developed plans that year that addressed the topic a lot better than they would have without that. And they didn't get anything they could use as research, it wasn't anything published, but they were able to get a picture of what the topic was, what that subject area was, and what the real problems were from the people who were working in it in this county and in this community.
And it makes your plan something that the judges might vote for because they know how important it is, instead of something obscure or a squirrel you found somewhere.
Yeah. I always enjoyed that.
Notice a lot of your alumni have gone on to law school.
Quite a few have, yeah.
Think that's your influence, or just the way things are now? Kids go college and they want something else that's still school.
They were all bright kids.
Yeah.
You start a speech and debate team, who do you get? You get the kids who are bright and are verbal and like to talk and like to argue. I mean, they were born to be lawyers.
Yeah.
But I also have, I have one captain from the Stanford debate team. Got a West Point graduate and an Annapolis graduate. Got a girl doing archaeology in Egypt. She's home now. Lobbyist in Washington, D.C. A couple of medical doctors working in medical fields so arcane that I'm not even sure what the titles are, doing molecular nuclear biology research.
Oh yeah, they specialize fast now.
Yeah, one of my brightest kids is at some sort of medical research facility in Texas doing molecular level nuclear studies of some sort.
Amazing.
Yeah, good kids.
Yeah, and whatever they go into, being able to speak gives them that little extra
One of
edge.
them was a criminal prosecutor and a debate coach, so, what more can I ask?
Quite a legacy you have. As debate changes, and we get more and more topics, and we have more and more individual events, do you think it's harder for the kids to focus, or do you think it gives them more of a chance to just explore what they're interested in and
I
more
don't think
kids
the
get
problem
involved?
is in the focus. I think the problem is in the fact that you offer so many events. You only have a handful of kids in each event, and they don't have anybody to compete against. It's like, you know, if you had a track team, and you ran 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards, 400 yards, 500 yards, 600 yards, and so on. You know, the kids still learn to run, but the kid who's running the 600-yard dash is probably going to have only 2 other kids to compete against. And we've done that to ourselves in debate. We've got too many events. And it's not that the events are wrong, it's that they're destroying the competition.
Diluting the pool.
You know, you go to a policy debate, you want to have 20 or 30 teams to debate against. You want to hear different ideas. You want to hear ideas from different places. You go to that tournament and there's only 4 teams doing policy. You've debated them all already. And you're going to debate them again in 2 weeks at the next tournament. And so on. And it destroys the competition. And I think it takes a lot of the fun out of the activity for the students.
That fun being in trying yourself against the best, or
well, that, and also preparing for something new. We've debated these guys 3 times already. They know our plan. We know theirs. We know what they're going to say. We know their arguments. It's not the same thing as going to a tournament not knowing who you're going to debate against, not knowing what their case is going to be like, having to prepare on the spot to answer the arguments.
that extemporaneous thinking, and yeah, that is a big draw of policy.
One of my favorite stories about policy debate is at the concerning, it was the year we did alternative energy.
Okay.
And I had a couple of policy teams that were doing different things. One of them had a case that was heavily financial, had to do with incentives to do green energy. The other one had a case that was fairly technical, and it had to do with the difference between windmills and wind turbines.
Oh.
One partner from each team had an event so that they couldn't go to a tournament. So the other 2 partners came together and tossed a coin as to which plan they'd use. We went to a tournament. I don't recall where it was, but I remember the opponents were from Nevada City. The opponents walked into the room, recognized one of the debaters at least, sat down to do their negative, and started pulling out evidence because they knew what the case was going to be. Only they got the wrong case. And about halfway through the first affirmative,
Took them that long to realize, oops.
2 Nevada Union students looked at each other, and one of them just wiped the tabletop clean. And they started pulling out new stuff. You know, I kind of like that, both because it's funny, but also because that's the way debate should be. It should kind of catch you by surprise, and you say, oh, well, how are we going to argue against that? That's one of the skills that it teaches is, you know, okay, I hear what you're saying, I understand your argument now, what am I going to do with it?
And you need the time. It's nice in policy to have 5 minutes of prep and 8 minutes to listen to the other guy's constructive.
Right.
Whereas in parley, they get some of that, but it's so fast and then it's over and you're not going to do that topic again.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. We've shot ourselves in the foot in some ways. Given too many options, and choices the downfall of a teenager.
That's true. One of the things that the team did that I always thought was really valuable, the Yuba City High School team helped me in creating a program for migrant ed in California. I was invited by the local migrant ed to do some sort of speech instruction for their students. And I took...
So these are mostly students of farm workers who come and go?
It's the program operated at the high school, federally funded, and it's a supplemental education program for I don't know if there's a requirement that there be a migrant farm worker in the family, but it's for that part of the population.
Okay.
Most of the students in the program are Latino, although in Yuba City a fairly large number of them are East Indian.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them have trouble with English, and so they wanted a speech program to help teach these kids to speak better. And I talked to my team, and I got a couple of volunteers, and we put together a student congress-like event, which meant that the students could speak or not speak. You know, if you don't raise your hand,
No
nobody calls
pressure.
on you. There's
Yeah.
no pressure. And we put together a couple of bills for them to debate, and did that at Yuba City. And then I was invited to come back and do it again. And the second time I went, we did it without the students from the team. And I went and basically I acted as the presiding officer of a Congress.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of that, I got invited to do a conference up at Tahoe. And for the conference, I had 2 or 3 days with the students. The first day we talked about laws, and they talked about laws they'd like to change, and we identified 2 or 3 things that they would like to change and agreed on what the elements would be. And said, okay, when we come back tomorrow, these 3 things are going to be bills and you're going to debate them.
Okay.
So we came back the next day with the things they were interested in and knew a little bit about, no research involved. Came back the next day and did a Congress-like debate on the legislation that had come up from the first discussion. That format was adopted by California Migrant Ed, and they've used that format now statewide as part of the speech program for Migrant Ed students. I don't know if they're still doing it, but you know, in the late 1990s or first part of the 2000s, that was the state's speech program for the Migrant Ed program statewide, and it was being used at high schools and so forth.
Low pressure, hook them with things they already know about and are interested in.
Yeah, and then let them debate each other and argue about it.
Yeah.
But with time limits and a presiding officer who's going to control them a little bit.
The structure that they don't have when they're sitting in the cafeteria.
Exactly, yeah.
You have an amazing legacy of the people who've come out of here, the programs you've built, the things you've offered to the state.
Fun things to do.
Yeah.
Fun things also in the community because of the students going out and getting things from the community. The interviews for different topics. The people who were invited to come to the debate team and participate. First couple of years I had a person in town who did basically job interview training.
Okay.
And came and talked to the team about how to dress, not in terms of, you know, wear a suit, but in terms of ideas about color, ideas about things that look coordinated, about
Those little professional coaching things.
Yeah. Same kind of coaching that she was doing for people who were in the social service system,
Mm-hmm.
who were going for a job interview where they'd never had to interview for a job before. And she was telling them, you know, this is how you present yourself, this is what you do, and the students had a lot of opportunity where the community knew what they were doing. We got into the newspaper all the time
I bet.
with results, and when I was named to the high school Hall of Fame, it was on the front page of the local paper. It was important. The debate team became part of this community, and the debate team got its fair share of publicity against all of the other high school activities that were going on.
That's awesome.
One of the things that was always amusing here was that the debate team was part of the athletic department.
That's where the money is, though. So that's where they should be.
I came in as a coach, and there was no money. So I sat down with a fellow named Gene Larrigan, who has since retired. And I said, Gene, I'm going to do this. How can I get money? And he said, well, first of all, the only way that we can do it quickly is create a club, and we'll name you the advisor.
Okay.
So I got a stipend being the club advisor, $200 or $300. But the first year, basically, I coached debate and paid tournament fees and traveled and so forth out of my own pocket.
A lot of us do that, yeah.
Went to the Rotary Club and said, I've started this team, we're at Yuba City High School. If I get this team into the state championship, will you pay the transportation? And the local Rotary Club said, yeah, we can do that. So then I went back to the team and said, Rotary Club is going to support you when you go to the state championship.
Not if, when.
And when you go to at the end of this year, they're going to pay your way. Rotary has a high school service club program. It's called Interact. The debate team is going to become an Interact club. Go recruit your friends. So Yuba City High School then had its first Interact club on campus. Rotary was thrilled. They were happy with the setup. And so there's a lot of things that were done that way. But being in the athletic department, I went to the athletic director and said, I've started this team. I'd like to have it in the athletic department. And he said, well, why? I said, well, I want to give letters.
Yes.
The money is here. I want to have a budget. And we're competing against other schools. And the athletic department is the only department on this campus that has anything that competes against other schools.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, we're part of a league. We have tournaments against other schools. We're representing the school. This is where we should be. And he agreed to it. And his reason for agreeing to it was that when it came time for accreditation, the fact that the debate team was co-ed and had a large number of female athletes helped him with accreditation.
Those Title IX numbers look a lot better.
Yeah. So for all the years that I coached, the debate team was in the athletic department. And the athletic department would budget our tournament up to the qualifying tournaments at the end of the year. And their policy was, we won't budget your state and national championships because teams don't always go to state and national championships. And I said, well, we've been 6 years in a row now. No, it wouldn't be fair to the other teams. So I went to the principal, and the principal of the high school had in his budget a state championship item for the debate team.
Excellent.
So we would compete through the year with the athletic department, and at the end of the year, if we made it to state, the principal had some money set aside to help us go to state. Then if we went to nationals, you start calling in favors.
You do.
I got money from Rotary, I got money from the Police Officers Association. Yuba City Police Department has an officer on campus.
Yes.
And so the officer on campus and I went to the Peace Officers Association and said, if these students make it to the national championship, will you rent them a van? Deputy Sheriff's Association did the same thing. Local Bar Association did the same thing.
And don't ask for money, say, we need a plane ticket, we need a van,
Yeah.
these kids need a nice dinner.
Right. And the result was that I don't think any of the students paid for anything but their own materials. They bought their own research materials. But even then, I went to the school library and got an agreement that if we bought research materials through the library, we could have them for a year, and at the end of the year, if they were in good order and we turned them over to the library, then the library would have them. So the Yuba City High School library has debate materials from those years, but the library would buy them for us. And we'd go in for a lot of the printed materials would be in the library budget.
So it sounds like there's a legacy of a lot of connections and a community that's invested in their debate team, not just financially, but they care about these kids.
There are a lot of disadvantages not being a teacher and not being on campus and seeing the kids every day and working with them every day after school. But there are a lot of advantages in being the district attorney and being able to work the team within the community and bring other support into the team that made it fun to do and gave us a good reputation in the community and got, you know, the mayors and city council people involved and that sort of thing.
And expose your kids to some real life political situations.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add for the people who are still watching?
One of the things that I said when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame and got a chance to speak to all of the students who were there at the state championship, I told them it doesn't matter what you know. What you know is in your head and it's not going anywhere. It doesn't matter who you know. People who say that it's more important who you know than what you know, they've got it wrong. The thing that matters is your ability to communicate what you know to whom you know. If you can't communicate it, it doesn't matter who you know and it doesn't matter what you know. All of the knowledge that you have, if it's going to be useful to your success in life, has to be something that you can share with other people, something that you can communicate to someone else, so that the idea in your head becomes something that you can get other people to help you, to cooperate, something to build, something to move forward. Communication is the key. And if you don't have communication, you can be the smartest lab rat in the world and you're still not going to go anywhere in life because you don't know how to deal with people. Mm-hmm. And you can be the biggest party guy who gets along with everybody, and if you can't communicate the knowledge that's in your head to them, they're going to think you're fun, but they're not going to respect you. Everything depends on communication. And the important thing about speech and debate is that it teaches that communication. Teaches it formally in speeches, teaches it in speaking style in the interps, teaches it in impromptu and extemp and in debate when you're not quite prepared for what you're going to say, but you've got to say it clearly anyway. It's the key to success in life. Communication is everything, and debate and speech is a wonderful place to learn all that.
It's a great note to end on. Thank you, Carl. It's been a fun interview.
Been great. Thank you, Eric.
And